On the 7th of February 2026, a Tejas Mark I light combat aircraft from Hindustan Aeronautics Limited crashed near Nalia in Gujarat. The pilot was able to survive after ejecting successfully, but the incident triggered a nationwide grounding of the entire Tejas fleet. HAL's statement called safety investigations as the reason, yet the event revealed a deeper issue. The Indian Air Force is operating at the lowest fighter squadron strength in decades. With only around 31 squadrons, minus 2 squadrons of the Tejas which are grounded, against the sanctioned requirements of 42 to 45 squadrons, India is approaching a period of operational vulnerability. The single crash is emblematic of a broader problem, reflecting delays in aircraft induction, dependence on foreign components, and the stress imposed on aging legacy platforms. Today on Radar Mode, we will take a deep dive into the Indian Air Force's severe squadron shortage, its reasons, and how it seems to be in the future. Welcome to today's episode of Radar Mode on Pakistan Connect. My name is Qasim. April 2025, a Sepacat Jaguar engaged in a new routine training mission crashed near Jamnagar. The pilot was killed. The fleet, inducted in 1979, is well past its originally intended service life, and structural fatigue was suspected in the preliminary board of inquiry. July 2025, another Jaguar went down during a training sortie. Both pilots were killed. 3 months, 2 fatal accidents involving the same extended life cycle operation. November 2025, a Tejas crashes in Dubai, UAE during an international air show. The Tejas crashed. The pilot was killed. Wing Commander Syal lost his life in the incident. Tejas was meant to be India's indigenous future. Instead, it became a cautionary tale on global stage. January 2026, another Jaguar crash near Haryana. The pilot ejected safely. It was the third Jaguar accident in under a year. An Antonov AN-32 transport aircraft had an accident near Bangalore. No fatalities, but the aircraft, a 1980s design, highlighted how even non-fighter fleets are aging badly. February 2026, Tejas crashes near Nalia, Gujarat. The fleet is grounded. The most recent crash triggered a fleet-wide grounding. Analysts note that this was the third significant Tejas accident in just 2 years, giving the fleet one of the highest accidental rates amongst modern fighters in service today. Keeping in mind that the prototypes have been flying around for a while, but it's been only a few years since the Tejas has been properly inducted into the Air Force, forming 2 squadrons. When we step back and look at these accidents and incidents together, a clear pattern emerges. It is not just a series of isolated technical failures or pilot errors. It is the manifestation of a fleet stretched beyond its intended lifespan, with aging airframes, delayed replacements, and maintenance pressures compounding each other. Jaguars crash because decades-old structures cannot handle modern sorties. Tejas struggles with integration issues and imported subsystems. And even support aircraft, like the AN-32, face operational strain. This pattern of accidents highlights the systemic vulnerabilities of the Indian Air Force, setting the stage for a deeper story of squadron shortages, delayed inductions, and impending capability gap. Each crash is a warning, a symptom of a force that is operating at the edge. And it naturally leads into the discussion of how India's fleet composition and strategic ambitions are colliding with reality. The Indian Air Force's persistent squadron shortage is not accidental. It is the cumulative outcome of decades of planning delays, procurement bottlenecks, and over-reliance on aging aircraft. India has long maintained a sanctioned strength of 42 to 45 squadrons to address threats on both western and northern borders. Yet, the force today operates with barely 31 squadrons. With the 2 Tejas squadrons being downed and grounded, that leaves us with 29 squadrons. But that's not the complete story. One of the primary causes is the slow induction of new platforms, including the Tejas LCA, Rafales, and upgraded Sukhois, all of which have faced technical, logistical, and political delays. A second factor is prolonged service life of the legacy aircraft, such as the Jaguars, the MiG-21s, and MiG-29s. These aircraft have repeatedly extended beyond their design limits due to the absence of immediate replacements, leading to structural fatigue, frequent accidents, and grounding of squadrons. Being a fleet composed mostly of Russian-origin aircraft, the Ukraine conflict has further complicated the maintenance of the Russian-origin platforms like Su-30 MKIs, MiG-29s, and the Mi-17 helicopters, creating a critical shortage of spare parts and slowing sortie operations. Budgetary constraints and policy indecision have also played a massive role. Over the past 2 decades, inconsistent defense budgeting, shifting priorities between indigenous development and foreign procurement, and bureaucratic delays in contracts have slowed the expansion of squadron strength. Programs like Tejas and AMCA, while symbolically important, have been repeatedly delayed, creating a gap between the IAF's ambition and its operational reality. Finally, the focus on high-end technology without proportional emphasis on numbers has exacerbated the problem. While India has invested in advanced fighters like the Rafales and the Su-30 MKIs, the pace of induction just cannot match the retirement of older aircraft, leaving squadrons under strength and overextended in combination. These factors explain why India is now facing the lowest fighter squadron strength since 1971, setting the stage for operational challenges and capability gaps that the rest of this episode will explore. Now, before we get into the details of what the squadron shortage is, let's talk about exactly what is a fighter squadron. A fighter squadron typically consists of 16 to 18 combat-ready aircraft. In some air forces, the numbers even go up to 22 and 24, which means that at any given point, a dozen aircraft are flight-ready. They are ready to scramble and to address any incoming threats. This could include a few aircraft which are undergoing maintenance or engine overhauls. But the real strength is not just in numbers. A squadron includes pilots, weapons officers, maintenance crews, logistics, radar integration, and command structure. You can think of a squadron as one solid battle group, which works together, thinks together, assesses, and replies to threats together. It is a deployable fighting formation. India's two-front war doctrine assumes simultaneous pressures from Pakistan in the west and China in the north and the east. And recently, due to the events in Bangladesh and the worsening relationships between India and Bangladesh, Bangladesh has evolved as another eastern threat for India. After the 1999 Kargil conflict, Indian planners emphasized air dominance as decisive. Post the 2020 Galwan crisis with China, the urgency increased. Former Indian Air Chief Marshal B.S. Dhanoa publicly stated that the Air Force was critically short of squadrons. Indian Parliamentary Committee reports over the years have repeatedly flagged the shortfall. India's sanctioned strength stands at 42 squadrons. The Indian Air Force at times demanded 45 to 60 squadrons to fully manage the two-front threat contingencies. Currently, at 28 to 30 squadrons, the shortfall is around 11 to 14 squadrons. That gap is not theoretical. It translates into fewer aircraft on patrol, fewer reserves for surge operations, and more flying hours per aircraft. More flying hours mean faster wear and tear of the engine, of the fuselage, and all the components on board. And faster wear and tear means earlier retirements, which deepens the shortage. The Indian Air Force's current fleet is diverse, comprising aircraft from Russia, France, Britain, and partially indigenous programs, each with unique maintenance requirements and operational lifespans. The Su-30 MKI forms the backbone of the force. With over 260 jets organized across 12 to 13 squadrons, these aircraft are highly capable in air superiority and deep strike roles. Yet, their dependence on Russian spares, now complicated by the Ukraine war, introduces sustainment risk. Also, they're quite aging. The MiG-29, once the pride and joy of the USSR, an air superiority fighter fielded in smaller numbers across 3 squadrons, has long surpassed its optimal service life and relies on difficult-to-source Russian components. Dassault Mirage 2000 jets, organized in 3 squadrons, provide precision strike capability but are aging and limited in quality. Also, the French company Dassault is no longer producing these, so the spare parts and maintenance can be a bit tricky. And of course, now we come to the Sepacat Jaguar. The Jaguar, once India's deep strike mainstay, now operates in 5 to 6 squadrons. But it is plagued by structural fatigue, outdated avionics, and multiple recent accidents, rendering it almost irrelevant in modern combat scenarios. It has virtually no BVR compatibility and is practically useless unless the IAF has achieved complete air dominance and there are no anti-air assets in manpads or SAMs in its operational radius, which basically means it has passed its life to be used in any modern warfare role. Rafales, again a Dassault production, French origin, the newest edition operates in 2 squadrons and offers cutting-edge multi-role capabilities, yet their numbers are insufficient to offset retiring aircraft, and the lack of French technology transfer limits long-time indigenous adaptation. And then we come to the Tejas. With roughly 32 Mark 1 aircraft across 2 squadrons, some trainers, is the cornerstone of India's light fighter program, but depends on American engines, Israeli radar and avionics, British ejection seats, and European subsystems. Its production delays, accident history, and reliance on foreign components limit operational readiness and diminish export prospects. International buyers are cautious of a platform that cannot operate independently or reliably. Taken together, the diverse fleet and aging airframes indicate that India is facing a period of transitional stress, where squadron numbers are temporarily falling just as regional air threat grows. As older aircrafts retire before new inductions, India risks a window where operational attack squadrons could drop to as few as 6 to 8 squadrons. Keep in mind that Pakistan is actively operating about 25 squadrons. Compare that to 6 to 8, which is a very viable situation. Even when Tejas Mark 1A and additional Rafales arrive, the transition gap leaves the IAF extremely vulnerable. This emphasizes the urgency of managing induction schedules, maintenance efficiency, and pilot training. What would be the quickest way to fill this gap? International procurements. Which leads us to the 114 Rafale deal between India and Dassault in France. The deal is said to be about $40 billion, which 12 years ago was about 1/3 that price. But political indecision can be a bit pricey and expensive. India's Rafale program promised both immediate capability enhancement and future self-reliance. The initial contract for 36 aircraft was delivered between 2020 and 2022, but the plan to acquire and locally produce 114 jets faces a delayed horizon stretching well into the 2030s. Actually, it will be lucky if any of the aircraft roll out from the Indian defense production before 2040. The Rafale induction will extend through the early 2030s, but full operationalization is unlikely before 2040. Claims of localization are limited by the lack of French source code and control over critical avionics. While French specialists can assemble and integrate subsystems within India, the absence of meaningful technology transfer prevents genuine indigenous mastery. Consequently, even this highly capable 4.5 generation aircraft cannot fully compensate for the IAF's impending squadron shortfall during the transition window. It also does not provide a sustainable indigenous capability comparable to the Russian source aircraft, which Indians have historically been able to assemble with more operational autonomy. This gap was supposed to be filled by the Tejas LCA program, which began in 1983, was envisioned as India's leap into independent fighter aircraft development. The goal was ambitious: to reduce reliance on foreign suppliers and establish a homegrown aerospace ecosystem. Today, the plan stands as a mixed success, embodying both India's industrial achievements and the persistent challenges of indigenization. The aircraft remains partially indigenous, with HAL assembling the airframe and integrating subsystems, but the core components, American GE F-104 engines, Israeli radar and avionics, British Martin Baker ejection seats, and other European electronics, mean the fighter is still heavily dependent on foreign suppliers. HAL, the primary manufacturer, has struggled with production bottlenecks for years. Delays in assembly lines, shortages of specialized components, and quality assurance issues have slowed deliveries and frustrated the IAF. The Air Force, which initially placed a great hope in Tejas by placing 180 orders of the Tejas LCA Mark I to replace aging fleets like the MiG-21, MiG-27 and the Jaguars, has developed a cautious mistrust in HAL's ability to deliver on time and at scale. This mistrust is compounded by repeated program delays for the Mark 1A variant, which was intended to bring critical upgrades such as improved avionics, ASR radar weapons integration, and structural enhancements. The aircraft's reputation has also been affected by multiple accidents. The recent crash in February 2026 that forced a grounding of the entire Tejas fleet. Earlier incidents such as the November 2025 crash in Dubai Air Show and operational setbacks during the flights have contributed to a perception that the platform is still immature and operationally fragile. While Tejas is technologically sophisticated, the combination of production delays, dependency on imported subsystems, and an accident history that marred its image within the IAF and in the international market. The AMCA, the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, India's ambitious fifth-generation fighter project, has recently been moved away from the struggling hands of HAL to a new private consortium led by emerging aerospace firms. This decision reflects growing frustration within the Indian Air Force and the government over HAL's repeated delays, bottlenecks in engine development, and the inability to deliver low observable technologies at the required pace. While the private players are technically competent, they're largely almost non-experienced at managing a program of this scale, making this a high-stakes experiment. Globally, India now lags behind China's fully operational J-20 stealth fighter, the FC-31, and even Turkey's TAI-TFX, the Khan, in terms of induction timelines and deployment readiness. Pakistan's limited fifth-generation efforts with upgraded J-10Cs and modest, yet the relative speed in modernizing shows a sharper procurement focus. By shifting AMCA to the newcomers, India hopes to accelerate development and bypass HAL's systemic issues. But it also introduces fresh risks, leaving the IAF in a prolonged waiting period where fleet modernization hangs in a weird balance. Export ambitions, which once looked promising, have begun to fade. Potential buyers are wary of a fighter that cannot operate independently and has a record of delays and accidents. Competing options such as Pakistan's JF-17 Block 3, Korea's FA-50, and used Swedish Gripen jets now appear more reasonable and reliable to smaller air forces seeking immediate operational capability. For India, Tejas remains a symbol of indigenous effort and potential, but operational frustrations, HAL's persistent production challenges, and a tarnished reputation mean it cannot yet fill the Squadron gap or deliver the international credibility originally hoped for, especially when every Tejas in the entire world is grounded sitting on the tarmac. India's shrinking squadron numbers must be viewed against regional developments. The Pakistan Air Force operates around 20 to 25 attack squadrons, including JF-17s, F-16s, and J-10Cs. Despite smaller numbers, Pakistan has emphasized network-centric integration between fighters, airborne early warning aircraft, and ground-based radars. Exercises with joint air forces, like the Shaheen series of exercises, have focused on rapid sensor-to-shooter data flow, allowing a numerically smaller fleet to maintain effective situational awareness, as showcased in the May 2025 conflict between India and Pakistan. China's People's Liberation Army Air Force fields over 60 squadrons, including J-10Cs, J-16s, and the 5th generation J-20 stealth fighter. These are fully integrated into layered air defense and surveillance networks, combining fighters, electronic warfare drones, airborne early warning, and surface-to-air missile systems. India's diverse fleet, reliant on Russian, French, and semi-indigenous platforms, faces integration challenges, especially as maintenance delays and the transition gaps stretch resources thin. While India maintains qualitative capability in select aircraft, mainly just the Su-30 MKIs and the Rafales, the temporary numerical shortfall and integration limitations reduce overall strategic deterrence. India is entering a transition period where old aircraft retire faster than new ones are inducted. Maintenance and pilot training are under pressure, and accidents in the Tejas and Jaguar fleets further slow operational readiness. This period represents a critical stress window, where squadron numbers are temporarily reduced while regional adversaries modernize and integrate their forces. In modern air power, planning and timing can be as crucial as technology. A delay of even a few years can meaningfully shift the balance of deterrence and operational options. Today, the Indian Air Force operates around 29 squadrons, potentially dipping to 22 to 25 during the transition. Pakistan maintains roughly 20 to 25 squadrons, but leverages standardized platforms and efficient network operations. China fields over 60 squadrons with a tightly integrated system of fighters, missiles, radars, and airborne platforms. India's fleet diversely presents integration challenges exacerbated by Ukraine-related supply issues for Russian aircraft. The temporary reduction in squadron numbers combined with the operational sophistication of regional adversaries creates a delicate strategic imbalance. The February 2026 Tejas grounding is symbolic of this particular transitional stress. India is retiring yesterday's aircraft while waiting for tomorrow's to arrive. Network capabilities, as demonstrated by Pakistan and China, amplify these risks. Air power today depends as much on coordination and data sharing as on aircraft numbers alone. Procurement timing, technology, and integration will define India's aerial deterrence in the next decade. That's all from Radar Mode this week on Pakistan Connect. If this episode has helped you understand the depth of India's air power challenges, support us by liking the Radar Mode, subscribing, and please share your comments. Do you think India can close this squadron gap before it becomes a strategic crisis? Let me know your thoughts. I'm Qasim, and I'll see you next week. Until then, stay informed, stay aware, and keep your Radar Mode on.